All right. All right. So welcome, folks, to all the people who are in the webinar. Thank you so much for being here. This is the fifth episode of the Agile Spain webinar series, where we're trying to get the people to discuss about product and Agile. So this time we have a very kind person who accepted to join with us to discuss a very interesting topic. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely my pleasure, Federico. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for giving us your time. We know that you are a very busy person. You have been traveling a lot. So if you wanted to introduce yourself to the world.
Absolutely. So hey everybody, my name is Jeff Gotthelf. Today I work as a coach and a trainer, a consultant, and a speaker in conferences. I talk primarily about agility, business agility, digital transformation, and what I really do is I help teams build better products, and I help companies build the cultures that build better products. My background is in design. I spent the first 10 years of my career doing UX design, and then I figured out with the help of my team and some colleagues, one answer to the challenge of doing user experience design in Agile. And that ended up being Lean UX. I managed to write a book called Lean UX with my co-author, Josh Seiden. And since then, that book really changed my life, because what I ended up doing is not designing products anymore, but teaching the material in Lean UX and coaching about it, and really designing teams and designing organizations. One of the most interesting things that has happened to me since then is the feedback over the last 6.5 years has been loud and consistent. And if you reduce it to the core feedback, it basically says, hey, Jeff, this Lean UX stuff is great. We want to work this way, but my boss won't let me work this way. And my company doesn't work this way. And so I saw that as an opportunity, and along with my business partner, Josh Seiden, we wrote another book called Sense and Respond. Now, the purpose of that book was to speak to the bosses and talk about what it means to create the kind of culture that allows customer centricity, evidence-based decision-making, continuous learning, continuous improvement, and agility to take place. And that conversation in that book focuses heavily, not exclusively, but heavily on this idea of managing to outcomes. Really, the core thesis is that software has taken over the world. The only way that we build successful businesses today is with software at the heart of those businesses. Software is continuous. Right? It doesn't come in a box. You don't go buy a box of software anymore. And so software is just continuous. It shows up and it updates. And that gives us a tremendous opportunity to build a continuous conversation with our customers, to understand what they need, how well what we are making for them meets those needs, and then what we need to do to improve that experience for them. Now, what that does is it fundamentally changes how we think about software development, right? We move away from this idea that making the software is the measure of success, right? Did you make the app, right? Is for many companies a measure of success. Well, yeah, we made the app. Okay, terrific. Did anybody download it? Right? Did anybody sign up? Did anybody how many people deleted it? Right? How many people are still using it after a month, right? Those customer behaviors are the outcomes that really matter to us, right? Making the app was an attempt to change those customer behaviors. And if those customer behaviors didn't change with the app, then we have to try something new. And so so the measure of success stops being the app and starts being, did we reduce the cost of communicating with our customers, right? Did we increase the amount of stuff that we sell through the mobile channel? And those are outcomes. Those are measures of customer behaviors. And it's those measures of customer behavior that tell us when we've delivered value to the customer. And it's how we capture value back into our organization as well. And so leaders, executives that get that understand that very simple concept can start to build more agile organizations and more customer-centric organizations. And that's what I do. I work with organizations to teach them that and then to coach them down this particular path.
Right. Awesome. Very good introduction, Jeff. Is it fair to say that you have basically run a webinar or podcast, an hour ago, about the same topic with your, colleague and friend? Is that true?
It's a true story, and it was pure coincidence. I was scheduling these things, and I didn't even catch the fact that we were doing them both on the same day. Now, what's great? Look, so Josh and I have been colleagues and business partners and friends for nearly 10 years, and he recently wrote a book called Outcomes Over Outputs. And the focus of that book is exactly the thing that we just talked about. Josh and I have a very similar point of view on this. And in that webinar, it was an opportunity for Josh to share his points of view on this. And I'll be honest with you, I've known him for a long time, and we absolutely see eye to eye philosophically. But he definitely has different points of view on some of this stuff than I do. And I like that, right? That's how I learn. That's how I get better, or it's how I challenge my own opinions. Yeah. So, anyway, so yes, so it's true. Yes.
Awesome.
Sorry.
So you can prepare.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. So if it's okay for you, Jeff, since we have a lot of questions that the people have submitted, would you mind if we start with some question and, trigger the conversation?
Of course.
All right. So, first one, what is the best way to frame the intended outcomes that you're trying to achieve?
So this is interesting, right? Because to me, there is only one way to do this right. And if you know me, if you've seen me speak, if you've taken a class from me, you know that I don't like to speak in absolutes, right? I'm just not that confident, right? To say never or always. Right? It's always this way. It's never that way. Right? I can't predict the future. Maybe some things will change. However, in this case, I believe that if you're going to try to manage the outcomes, there's only one way to frame them, and that is as human behavior. Now, the humans whose behavior you are trying to change are your target audience. So, if you are in e-commerce, the humans are your customers. If you are in learning management systems, the humans are students. If you are in human resources, the humans are staff that work for your company, right? If you're an executive, the humans are your direct reports, something along those lines. But that's the key thing. The key thing is framing an outcome as a change in human behavior. And here's why. And by the way, we'll talk about this later, but here's why. When you frame an outcome as anything other than behavior change, you get right back to the world of fixed scope and usually fixed time, right? So if we say, the outcome is we built the new call center, right? Then all we're doing is listing the specifications and the features for the call center. And once we tick that off, we're done. That's great. Did anybody call the call center? Right? How well does the call center work? Right? That kind of thing. So that's the key thing. The key thing is that the outcomes are framed as human behavior. Why? Because when you tell a team to change human behavior, you are explicitly asking them to go and learn something, right? You're actually very explicitly asking them to be agile. Because if you think about it, let's say we are on a team and we now, and the job of that team is to increase um, mobile commerce, right? So the amount of stuff that we sell via the mobile channel, right? Let's say our goal is 15%. That's an outcome. That's a change in behavior.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Well, you have an idea. I have an idea. Everybody in the team has an idea. We have to go find out which of those ideas is the best idea.
Right.
And the faster we can find out which of those ideas is not the best idea, the more time we can spend working on the best idea. That's agile, right? That's agility, right? It's continuous learning, improvement, and course correction. And so managing the outcomes drives agility.
Right. Awesome. I think that the people normally have problems when they're trying to measure. So because you said that this is customer behavior, is how the people behave. It's very difficult at some point, at some extent, saying, all right, how do we measure that? How do we know where the people are changing their behavior, right? Yeah. So they are having, I think, that problem when they're trying to say, all right, I want to start to measure outcomes rather than outputs.
Well, if you think about it, look, the majority of us make software or make products that have software embedded in it, right? That software can be instrumented. You can put metrics, right. Analytics into those. And at the very least, you can start to measure quantitative data. Are people doing it? Are they coming back? Are they telling their friends? Right? That's a great start. And so there's no reason today to not have quantitative data in anything that you make. And so I just don't buy that as an excuse anymore. We don't measure, right? What do you mean you don't measure? Like right. You're not doing your job well if you're not measuring.
If you're not measuring, right? If you cannot measure, you can improve it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. So I want to refer to one thing that you just said. Because there's an interesting question. In your most recent newsletter, you stated every project does not have to be agile. However, each project you work on should encourage and support agility. Mm-hmm. And you basically distinguish between agile and agility. Could you please, relate that to what you were saying, related to outcomes?
Absolutely. Look. I mean, you guys know this. There's an industry around Agile, big A Agile, right? The religion, right? In that world, and look, and I'm not criticizing, okay? I'm not, but we know that exists, okay? Yeah. In that world, there is a tendency for people to seek recipes, to look for recipes. Right? Just tell me the 10 things I need to do so I can do Agile. I want to do Agile, right? Give me those 10 things.
Yeah.
Are you Agile at the end of it? Right? If you do the 10 things, right? Not the first time you do it, and probably not the second time, and maybe it'll take you 3, 4, 5, or maybe 10 times of going through a sprint with the ceremonies and the retrospectives and so forth. And still, right, what's the goal? Like, how do you know that it's working? To me, this again, it's a perfect illustration of output and outcome, right? Buying a recipe and implementing an agile recipe is an output, right? What is the behavior change we want to see if this is working? Right. And it's not things like people attend stand-ups, people come to retrospectives. It's, are we learning more quickly? Are we using that information to make decisions? And are we changing course based on that evidence?
Right.
That's the difference between agile and agility. Agile, to me, is the process. Agility is the outcome of a good process, which is we're learning, we're changing course, and we're doing it quickly so that we can help make the customer more successful on an ongoing basis. And look, many organizations aren't good at this. They're good at agile, but they're not good at agility, right? Because changing course means that I have to admit to my boss, to the vice president, to my boss's boss, that I was wrong.
Yeah.
Right? We started building this thing and we find out that we were wrong. And so we're going to change course. And that's scary. Right? And so organizations that are good at agility have cultures of high trust, where that trust empowers the teams to actually be agile, right? And in those, and to tie this all back together, right? In those teams, being agile means that the measure of success is not is changing customer behavior, because we have to keep trying to figure out the right combination of features and business models and value propositions and delivery channels and performance, et cetera, right? To change that customer behavior. And we're never going to get it right the first time. Right. So to me, that's the difference between agile and agility. And agility is managing the outcomes.
Right. But do you think there is a gap? Because, I've seen that, what you're saying in different organizations, that they are basically trying to be compliant with the process rather than saying, all right, it doesn't make any sense to, be there 9:15 every single day if we are not basically trying to achieve what we are trying to achieve, right? So I think that there's a human tendency to try to find, as you say, the silver bullet, and this is how we're going to do to try to stay agile. And, after that, say, we're done, we're there, and, basically executing the process every single day, but not seeing, for example, if the people within the team, they're trying to change or they are working the different way that they used to work. Right?
Yeah. Look, if we were to have this part of this conversation 2 years ago, right, I would have had a very different answer than the one I'm about to give you. 2 years ago, I would have told you that simply going through the motions of Agile, the recipe, is a vanity metric, right? Did you go to stand-up? Yes, I went to stand-up. Did you have a retrospective? Yes, I had a retrospective, right? Did you do iteration plan? Yes, I did iteration plan, right? Like, to me, so what? Like, you're doing all those things, but 2 years ago, I would have said, so what? That's a vanity metric. It doesn't tell you anything. It just says that you're doing stuff, but it doesn't mean that you're actually building better products, being more successful, right? Today, I have a different point of view. I've changed my mind. I'm agile about that. Right. But teams that have never worked this way before are going to be very difficult to convince that there is, at first, that there's benefit to this. The only way that you're going to change their minds is to have them go through the motions, even if at first they have no idea why they're doing it. Once they start to go through the motions, in theory, they start to see the value of the activities. And then eventually they get better and they get increasingly more trusting of each other, right? They seek out learning, they change course more often, and they start to throw away those training wheels, right? So all of those rituals become something that they do or they don't do, but they become experts. And so my point of view today is that with new teams, it's okay to count how many stand-ups did you have, how many retros, who came, what's our attendance rate at first, right? With the expectation that eventually we move on from that, because I've been telling this story forever, but in my talks, the story of the Karate Kid. Yeah, right. The Karate Kid story from the movie, the first one, not the crappy second one, the original one, right, from 1980, whatever. In that movie, Daniel's son comes to Mr. Miyagi, and he says, "I want to learn karate." And Mr. Miyagi says, "Great, paint my fence." And Daniel's son is painting the fence. He says, "But I want to learn karate." He says, "Great, wax my car." Right? He's waxing the wax on, wax off, right? Daniel's son at first does not understand why he's painting the fence and waxing the car. But what he's doing is he's going through the motions. And then eventually he realizes that he's learning karate and he can integrate those moves into achieving his goal, his outcome, right? It's the same exact thing. People go to stand up. They don't know why they're going to stand up for the first month, but then it starts to show value. And then they start to integrate it into the way that they work. And it should ultimately change how they develop and deliver projects and products. So,
I have to say one thing, Jeff. I mean, I know that you also know Barry O'Reilly. I think that the message that he conveys in his new book is, I say basically if you want to start, changing, because that is basically what he's saying. So if you want to start to change something, you want to change behaviors. That is the first thing that you need to do, right? If you want to change the culture, first start changing the behaviors, and then step by step you will do, as you're saying, going through the motions, and then you will understand what you're doing. Yeah. But if you try to say, let's change the culture, from out of the blue, people won't understand why are you saying that, and they won't know how to do it. But if you start changing their behaviors, I think is the first step.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And I've heard Barry speak about that. I know Barry very well. He's a friend. I've read his book as well. And the new one, and I really like it. And, the story, I learned this story from Barry, right? He talks about the story about the Numi plant, right? And the Numi plant story is a perfect example of this, right? Where you've got car factory workers who are behaving very badly. And then Toyota comes in and takes over the plant, and instead of trying to convince them that lean, Toyota, the Toyota production system. Sorry, I forgot what the P stood for. the Toyota production system is a better way of working, right? Let me tell you how great TPS is. Let me tell you how. Instead of doing that, they said, "Look, we're going to take you to Japan, and you're going to work in our plant with a colleague from our side, and together we'll show you this new way of working." And that was the only way they could change the minds of these people, that there was a different way to do this. And then when they came back, they behaved differently because their mindset had changed, right? So we changed the behavior first, and the mindset follows.
Right. Yeah, that was basically trying to do that link between what you were saying about the emotions and how you have to, start changing the behavior, then, ultimately to try to change how people think.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. What are the difference, Jeff, between customer outcomes and business outcomes? Is there any way to relate those two?
Yes, there is. It's a fairly common, I'll call it accounting tactic. Maybe it's a statistics tactic, but the way that I teach it is leading and lagging indicators. So business outcomes are, generally speaking, lagging indicators. They are metrics that look backwards. So sales, revenue, profit, even customer satisfaction. They tell you what has happened, right? They're backwards, they're lagging indicators. Mm-hmm. Customer outcomes are leading indicators. They are the customer behaviors that predict business outcomes. For example, let's say I'll use an example I use when I teach. So when I teach today, the example that I use is mattress stores. Okay, so right. So I'll do the example with you. Okay, let's say you are now the owner of a mattress store. Right. What's your business outcome? What's your high-level measure of success?
I want to increase sales.
Sales, right? Sales, profit, number of mattresses sold. Yeah. Right. That's a business outcome. That's a lagging indicator. Now, what are customer behaviors that you can observe that will tell you that you might sell a mattress?
That's the difficult part.
Like, what are customers doing in your store?
Yeah, for example, if people go, they're happy. I don't know. They're happy. They're more. I don't know. More satisfied with the. They are recommended. For example, my mattresses to other people.
Right. So people come to the store first and foremost,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's a behavior, right? How many people come to the store every day? How much time they spend in the store?
Right.
Do they lie down on a mattress? Right? Do they lie down on more than one? Do they come into the store with their partner?
Right.
Do they ask about taking away their old mattress? Right? These are all leading indicators that you might sell a mattress. Those are customer outcomes. Mattress sales is business outcomes.
Right.
How you optimize the experience of your store will directly impact those customer outcomes. And that may or may not improve your business outcomes. For example, I ran the same exercise in Norway late last year with a room full of designers, Norwegian design students.
Oh my gosh.
They were great. No, they're awesome. And they said they would. One thing they wanted to do was they would take all the mattress information and put it on the ceiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because to read the information about the mattress, you have to lie down, right? Putting the information on the ceiling is an output. It's a tactic. It's a feature of the store. Why do we do that? Because we want people to lie on mattresses. Customer outcome. And why do we want that? Because when they lie on the mattress, they're like, oh, this is nice. They buy a mattress. Business outcome, right? So there's a direct relationship between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to decide as an organization, as a company, as a store, whatever it is, which ones of those customer metrics, customer outcomes is strategically important to us right now.
Right.
Because we're going to focus on those today. And then we're going to, and then maybe move on to different ones later. So that's the difference, right? High level measure of business health, business outcome, customer outcome, tactical things that customers do that we think drive business outcomes, lagging and leading.
That's because you normally say that customer value is equal to business value, right? Normally.
Mm-hmm. There's a direct correlation there, right? We want our customers to believe they are getting value.
Yeah.
And they show that to us by buying things from us, basically, right? And again, all of those are behaviors, but there's steps, right? There's steps between I come to your store and I buy something, e-commerce, retail, bank, or whatever it is. I do research. I talk to somebody. I compare. There's all kinds of ways to do that. And so we have to decide what kind of experience we want to create for our customers so that they can be more successful, so that we can be more successful.
Right. I'm going to take something that you just said, because I think it's important to introduce the next question. You say that, for example, these people build these things on the ceiling because they wanted the people to lie down. That also, I think that it's important to know that is. I assume that was an experiment, right? It's something that was not on a fixed thing, because we absolutely know that the people will lie down if we put something on the ceiling, right? So something that.
Yeah. Yes, it's an experiment, right? It's their best guess about how to get people to lie down.
Right. And one of the things that I want to tie this statement with is that you also mentioned, for example, I'm going to start to talk about like roadmaps. You always say that normally the roadmap should be made out of outcomes rather than outputs. Is that for that reason that you need to put, what is the intended thing that you wanted to achieve, and then you start to create that culture of experimentation to see, for example, if we are moving the needle into the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. The measure, if we give a team some outcomes to achieve, there is an infinite combination of features, value proposition, delivery channels, business models, price points, design, right?
Right.
It's an infinite combination of things you can do to drive that outcome. How do you know which is the best combination? Right? You don't know. And so those become your hypotheses, right? We think that having an app will drive mobile commerce. We think that having geo-fenced SMS alerts will drive mobile commerce, right? We think that advertising on Snapchat will drive mobile commerce, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those are your hypotheses. And your job is to then go figure out which one is the best one, the one that, and the measure of best, right? The way that you measure best is with that outcome. So the nice thing about that is that this allows you to make objective decisions, right? Because if we're trying to increase mobile commerce by 15%, and you have an idea, and I have an idea, and you say, no, my idea is better, I'm gonna say, okay, let's do your idea, let's test it. And your idea increases mobile commerce by 1%, and my idea increases mobile commerce by 6%, then we can have an objective conversation, right? Even if you're my boss, right? So you can be my boss and say, I saw this on Amazon, we need to do it, right? It works for Amazon, it'll work for us. Okay, let's test it. Didn't work, right? Okay, at least we tried it. We can move on to the next thing. So that's the key. That's the other benefit here is that we can try. It doesn't always work, but we can try to have objective conversations about our ideas as well, which is good because we all love our ideas, and that makes it subjective. My idea is better than your idea.
Right. Exactly.
Because it's my idea. Right?
Exactly.
So that's the hard part here.
So how do you do that, Jeff? For example, if you're, I assume that you're working with, big organizations. How do you do to try to instill this kind of outcome mindset? Because I understand that, for example, if you have a team that is going to start to work this way, and that team, for example, have dependencies with another team, how do you start, creating this kind of, spread thing about how the people should start working on outcome? Because I understand that at the end of the day, if you have a team, all right, that team can, for example, can be responsible for one part of the application or whatever. But then you have to, I hate this word. You have to scale that to try to, pull the other people. But how do you do that, for example, when you have to make this a little bit bigger than just one team?
Yeah, it's difficult. There's a couple thoughts here that I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. So, first, the first thing that I would do with any team to get them to think this way is to work with them to reframe their work as a problem to solve. So instead of saying build me an iPhone app, I would say we have a problem. Right. The problem is that nobody is buying from us on through the mobile channel, and we know that our target audience is mobile first, and we feel like we're leaving a lot of money on the table. Okay, great. That's a problem statement. That fundamentally changes the conversation because now we have to go solve that problem, and the measure of success for that is an increase in mobile commerce. So problem statements are good, and you can put multiple teams against the same problem statement. Right. And the reason why, or one of the tactics that prevents that from becoming total chaos, which it can become, is that now all of the teams that are set to solve this business problem statement have the same measure of success, right? Yeah. They have the same outcome as the other four teams. And so they have to self-organize. They have to build the communication patterns. They have to build the kind of knowledge sharing that allows them to learn quickly and not step on each other's toes, not duplicate effort, and definitely not do things that hurt each other, right? Because we win or lose together based on this mobile commerce number. And so I'll give you an example of what I mean. I worked on a product team at a company called The Ladders 10 years ago in New York, okay? The Ladders was a job board for people who made $100,000 or more. Mm-hmm. I worked on the product team. we had a marketing team. Okay. The CEO was very, very sensitive about top line revenue.
Mm-hmm.
He had a dream of going public. And so top line revenue was the key metric for him. And he knew that if top line revenue starts to dip, all he needed to do is ask the marketing team to send more emails. Okay. Now, the marketing team would send more emails. And those, because you're sending more, even if your conversion rate is the same, right? You're converting more. And so the revenue goes up, the top line revenue. By spamming people with endless emails, we were destroying the brand and the retention in the product. And so while he's lifting the top line revenue, retention is
churn your people.
Yeah, it's in the gutter.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but the marketing team was measured on conversion rate and top line revenue, and the product team was measured on retention.
Right.
Right. And so we're trying to optimize retention. They're trying to optimize conversion, and we're conflicting because what they're doing is hurting us. And the work that we're trying to do isn't necessarily helping them. Now, if we had taken those two teams, put them together, and we said, look, you've got to figure out how to acquire more customers and not just acquire them, but also drive up their lifetime value.
Yeah.
Right? Now you have to work together, not just to acquire garbage customers, forgive me, right? But good customers who will stick around and get value from what we're actually selling them, right? So that the cost of acquisition isn't wasted on somebody who's going to churn out in 12 days.
Yeah.
So that's how you do it. You create that problem statement, and then you make that the problem for multiple teams as you scale up.
Right.
So that helps a lot. But those teams have to be, forgive me for saying this, those teams have to be agile. They really have to show the qualities of agility, self-organization, transparency, communication, proactiveness, humility, trust, respect for each other, right? So that, because otherwise they'll still fight, right? So it's not
exactly.
easy, but that's a good place to start.
Exactly. And that, I think that one of the mistakes that people are doing when they're starting to implement OKRs, the OKRs from the different teams are basically clashing against one another. And then you have one people there chasing one thing and, the other team is chasing another thing. And they are basically conflicting at some point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Awesome. This is a good one. A lot of companies, Jeff, especially product companies, their structures, they are calling themselves like product-led companies. They are using this kind of framework, which is the Northstar Framework. Mm-hmm. Is that the Northstar like a business outcome, and then you basically organize everything around that Northstar?
As I understand it, yes. I'll be honest with you, I'm not intimately familiar mm-hmm. with that. I've seen what was his name? Justin from Amplitude. That's what I remember. Yeah. I went to Productized in Lisbon last year. Yeah. And he gave his presentation is fantastic. I would highly recommend you go seek it out. I can't remember his last name, but it's Justin. He's American. He works at Amplitude, and he spoke at Productized in Lisbon last year. And he talks about this North Star, which is the thing that this team or this set of teams is targeting, right? Essentially a business outcome. Right. And then they're looking for those leading indicators, right? And then they're identifying which ones stand the greatest chance of impacting that North Star. Now, the interesting thing here is that while we are going to make assumptions mm-hmm. about which customer outcomes drive business outcomes, mm-hmm. we don't have to make blind guesses. Mm-hmm. One of the most successful teams that I've ever been on was lucky enough to have an analyst on that team, dedicated to our team. And he wasn't just a reports monkey, forgive me, for saying that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. He knew that his job was much more than making reports, and he was genuinely curious about the numbers and the causation between them. And he would do research, and he'd come back and he says, look, when we acquire traffic from this source, and within the first 7 days they do this, right? They stick around.
Yeah.
Right. And so as you're building that Northstar framework, if you can bring an analyst into that conversation, they can help the teams focus more quickly on customer behaviors that stand a better chance for success. Right. And a curious analyst is hugely valuable to just to reduce the time. Right. If we're looking for efficiencies, somebody like that reduces the time it takes you to find the right path to explore.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. I don't know how to take this question, but there are many ways. There are people like they're very into forecasting outputs. I want to split this question. Do you recommend to forecast outcomes? If there is a way that the answer is yes. Do you know how to forecast outcomes? I think that's very
So look, we need to set targets, right? Because those targets tell us when we are done. When you manage to output, it's binary. Right? Did you make it? There it is. I made it. It's done. Right? With outcomes, if I say increase retention by 50%, right? And your team increases retention by 27%. Are you done? What if it's 42%? Are you done? Right? So we need a milepost. We need the team to know where success roughly is. So that's one. So yes, we need to set a target. And we're going to attempt to, we can attempt to say, and we think we will hit 50% retention in 3 months. Okay. So yes, I think we can do that. The question, there's a couple of questions here. One, I think, is how do you choose the number? And then the other is what happens if you don't hit the number, right? So the first answer to that, and I got this from Josh just a couple of hours ago. I thought this was a really great question, right? How do you decide what's a good enough metric? What's a good enough outcome, right? Is 50% retention enough? Is 75% retention enough? And I think this comes down to a conversation with your stakeholders to say, what are you willing to write a check for, right? Are you willing to fund my team to increase retention by 20%? No, that's not meaningful. 50%, right? Okay. Yeah, 50% is meaningful. Okay, great. So we think we can hit 50% in 3 months, right? So that's one. Second, what happens if we don't hit it? And this is, again, coming back to Agile and, more importantly, the qualities of agility. If I'm your boss and you commit to me that in 3 months you will increase retention by 50%, and I never see you again until 3 months from now, and you don't hit 50%, like you don't show up at my desk on 3 months from now and say, here's 50% retention, right? I'm going to be pissed, right? But that's not how we work. It's not how we should work. In other words, at the end of that 3 month cycle, nobody should be surprised if we hit 50% or if we didn't hit 50%, right? Every sprint, you have a retrospective, you have iteration planning, you have sprint review, you have demos, you have all of these activities that promote transparency. And so if I'm paying attention to your communication, your transparent communication to me, right, I will know, and you will know very much earlier than 3 months whether you're going to hit 50%. And we will know why, right? Maybe it's impossible, right? We'll never hit it, right? Maybe we just need 3 more months, right? Maybe you're going to hit 75%. right? But there should be no surprises at the end of the cycle. Transparency, proactive communication, knowledge sharing, anything you can do to just kind of say, here's what we're doing, here's what we're learning, here's how we're trending towards our outcome, and this is what we're doing next. Right? That should be a regular conversation with your stakeholders.
Right. The thing is that I think it's very tricky, because at the end of the day, when you're saying that an outcome is a change, measurable change in customer behavior,
yeah,
customers are difficult. I mean, are difficult to handle in terms of, you don't know. Maybe today the behavior is A, and then two months or 3 months later, the behavior changes. Right. So it's very difficult. You have to also adjust the outcome that you're trying to achieve. Is that a correct statement, or?
This is why we need to manage the outcomes, because that stability in customer behavior doesn't exist anymore. There's just the capabilities to update the systems are getting better every day, and the services that all of us use on a daily basis use those capabilities. And what they're doing is they are training the public. So the services I'm talking about are Facebook, Instagram, Google Maps, iOS, Android, Amazon, Netflix, right? Those services are setting expectations about what it means to provide a modern service, right? Our customers will have those same expectations with the products and services that we make. And I don't care if they're B2B, right? Or some other stuff, right? If Google Maps pinches and zooms, and you're selling me a B2B mapping product, right? Which exist. Those things exist, right? I expect to pinch and zoom on that, right? And when Google Maps changes that paradigm, that control, I expect your map to work the same way. The change there's too much change, right? And so by building in outcomes, we are explicitly embracing the uncertainty and that continuous change. We're saying, look, we're heading towards this customer behavior change, and along the way, the things that we make will no longer work because customers will change their minds. And so we're always going to try to improve this, right? Systems thinking, continuous improvement, right? That whole thing is in there. And that's the key, right? Because let's just use pinch and zoom again. If our reaction to, well, Google pinches and zooms is we have to build that too, right? By the time we build and ship that,
changes.
Google has changed already.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the key. The key is to build that learning muscle into the way that we work.
Yeah, and I think that you also mentioned sometimes that that is basically the idea behind sense and respond, right? So at the end of the day, what you have to do is to try to see, for example, how customers start using your product, because from today or two weeks later, it might change, and you might have an unexpected outcome that you were not managing at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing, and we talked about this with Josh a couple of hours ago as well, is to really keep. It's always good to have kind of a couple of outcomes to measure, especially to kind of make sure that you're not optimizing too much and creating dark patterns, right? So dark patterns being behaviors that customers do, but that negatively impact them, right? Addiction to technology, sharing fake news, that kind of thing. The example I love, and I use this example all the time, is you take a company where the human resources department has launched an unlimited vacation policy. Mm-hmm. It's a popular technique in the United States. Yeah. What's the outcome that they're trying to achieve? Well, the outcome that they're trying to achieve is to be more attractive to better talent. So we want to see the number of applicants go up. Mm-hmm, that's an outcome. The quality of applicants go up, right? And that'll tell us that this vacation policy is appealing to our target audience. Mm-hmm. But what actually happens, at least in the United States, is that with unlimited vacation, Americans take less vacation. than they already do. They take very little anyway,
Yeah.
right? When you have a finite amount, when you have 2 weeks of vacation, which most Americans have, right? I have to use it or I lose it. But unlimited, well, it never runs out. So I never take any. What happens is then people burn out, they don't do good work, and they quit, right? So your unlimited vacation policy might be driving applications, but it's driving down retention. Yeah. So we always want to put a couple of outcomes in place to make sure that we're not damaging the ecosystem in any particular way.
Exactly. Nice. Yeah. So we're reaching the end. Jeff, I would just want to ask you one question before we wrap up.
Sure.
When you, I assume that you're working with, Spain companies here, in Barcelona, where you're currently living. What is the first approach when you come, for example, to a team? You start coaching a team. You mentioned, for example, business problem statement, that is one of the things that you're doing to try to change the mindset. What is the other thing that you're trying to help the people understand these concepts, especially when they are more, accustomed to work, building features and this kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I'll tell you my favorite question. My favorite question when I start any engagement is, how do you measure success? And 100% of the time, the answer is the same. Do you know what the answer is?
Definition of done. I have the definition of done over there.
Right. No, it's not even that specific. I say, how do you measure success? And they say, that's a very good question.
Wow.
Right? They say, I never really thought about it. Right? It's really interesting, right? It's really interesting because we are so accustomed, right? There's so much history and momentum behind this kind of manufacturing mindset that we don't even think about it, right? Like, success is I finished the project and I went to the next project. And so to me, that's the beginning of the conversation, right? And they'll say, well, we shipped a new backend system. Cool. And did it work? Well, it works. What did it improve, right? Did it reduce the response time in the call center? Did it reduce our customer service costs? Did it make our resolve customer service concerns more quickly, right? And so that starts the conversation. And then, and to me, that's the most important question to ask. And then ultimately, the other question I ask is, how do you make decisions? That's my other question. Right, which I love that question as well, because the decisions I want to talk about are, how do you decide what to work on? How do you decide when you're done? How do you prioritize? And again, usually the answer there is not, that's a good question. Usually the answer is, somebody tells us what to do. Right,
the product owner.
Yeah, exactly. The product owner tells us what to do. Right. And so that's how I start. And to me, that starts to, creates the space for a good discussion.
Got it. Awesome. So Jeff, do you want to tell the people, what are you up to for? We know that summer is, around the corner, but do you want to mention, trainings that you're going to be giving, I don't know, in Spain and other countries, talks or whatever that you're involved in?
Yes.
The coming future?
Absolutely. I definitely plan on teaching in Spain this year. I think I'm going to teach in Madrid with Josh. We're working on it right now, late September, early October. I think we're going to do an OKR workshop there, which I think will be great. It's going to be brand new and a lot of fun. In English, sorry, my Spanish isn't there yet. The other things that I think, there's two other things I want to mention. I work with Jeff Patton a lot.
Yeah.
And he and I teach together. We do a product ownership class. We will be in Munich and in London in September. So,
which is great, by the way. I did that workshop in Berlin. Awesome. Yeah.
Great. Yep. And I flew home to Barcelona from Munich today. It was an hour and 15 minutes. And so super easy. And then the last thing I want to talk about is this partnership that Josh and I have started with Scrum.org. Yeah. We worked with Scrum.org for a year to build the Professional Scrum with UX course. We launched it in March, and there are currently 35 courses available worldwide, which is amazing. We did a class in Barcelona back in May. A lot of professional Scrum trainers were there to get trained, and so it's a good class. It's a class about how do you integrate user experience, design, and research into Scrum. And so it's a class for designers, researchers. It's a class for Scrum masters and product owners, and bringing the team together to really talk tactically. How do we do design and research in Scrum? And it's a great class.
Beautiful. Awesome. So we have the conference Agile Spain this year in Barcelona, the 22nd and 23rd of November.
Nice.
Then we have to see if you are willing to come. I don't want to put you on the spot right now with all the people on the webinar, but we have to. Let's talk later if you're available.
We'll talk later
because we would love to have you. One last thing, Jeff. Book, podcast, something besides Sense and Respond. All the suite that you have with Sense and Respond, but something that you would recommend the people to read or to listen.
Yep. So I will recommend Barry O'Reilly's new book, Unlearn. Really good, short, practical, applicable to teams, to executives, to your life. I love it. I'm really, really proud of the work Barry did there. Awesome.
Jeff, it's been very valuable for us that you have been here with us, sharing, talking. It's the first time that we do it without the slide or deck. So it's been really, really nice to have this conversation with you.
Good.
Thank you so much. And let's talk later.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much for inviting me. And thanks for listening, folks. And if you have any questions at all, I'm super easy to find. Just reach out and I'd love to chat with you.
Indeed. Jeff, thank you so much. And thank you all the people on the webinar.
All right, folks. See you later.